Have you ever stopped to imagine what went on beyond the prayers in medieval monasteries? Many people believe that monks and nuns lived in complete austerity, never giving in to impulses or desires. However, when we take a closer look, we uncover stories that reveal a daily life far from this idealized image. To understand this world, picture a quiet scene surrounded by stone walls. On the outside, everything seems calm, disciplined, and dedicated to religious life. But beneath the surface, passions and secrets flowed, hidden from the eyes of those on the outside. It is within this contrast that we find records of acts deemed scandalous carefully concealed by those who wanted to maintain appearances. These behaviors did not happen solely out of impulse. Amid the religious routine, moments of boredom and curiosity became the spark for suppressed desires. Moreover, daily interactions between people of different ages and backgrounds created bonds that went beyond the limits allowed by monastic rules. This is how forbidden relationships emerged, leaving their mark on the history of monasteries. At night, when the monastery gates closed, medieval monks allowed themselves freedoms that do not always make it into traditional accounts. During the day, they adhered to a basic diet of bread, fruits, vegetables, and a small amount of protein. But in the hours of darkness, these religious men gathered to eat and drink with gusto. Fasting was a common practice and was generally respected, but it was not as strict as many might think. On feast days or special occasions, banquets would appear, featuring fish, shellfish, and drinks like wine and beer, often consumed quite liberally. While meat was forbidden in many monastic communities, exceptions were made for illness or special needs, broadening the range of food on the table. These nighttime gatherings, combined with a generous amount of bread consumed, show that the monks' lifestyle was not as austere as often portrayed. Many of them were overweight, which can be attributed to a less active routine and periods of idleness. Some monastic communities upheld the tradition of consuming up to a loaf and a half of bread per person, which already suggests a rather generous eating habit. Beer also held a significant place in their daily lives, not just as a way to curb hunger, but as an art mastered by monk brewers who crafted high-quality brews. However, when the monks overindulged, the outcomes ranged from fits of laughter to bold, surprising behavior from those expected to embody austerity and faith. These moments of excess were not limited to food and drink. The daily task of copying books and manuscripts was monotonous, and the monks sought ways to entertain themselves. In their boredom, they began doodling in the margins of pages. While many might imagine simple decorations, there was much more going on. Among the letters, they sketched drawings that revealed humor, frustrations, and desires rarely visible in their monastic routines, offering glimpses into a world of contradictions. In medieval monasteries, the routine of copying manuscripts was intense and repetitive. As they filled page after page with the same words, some monks found an escape in the illustrations they added to the paper's corners. They sketched rabbits, warriors, elephants, and even snails often in whimsical scenes. But what most people do not realize is that this was the origin of something we now call emoticons. The little symbols we use to express emotions in texts and social media started as doodles in the margins, offering an outlet for boredom and frustration. This curious behavior was not limited to monks. In certain convents, nuns also dealt with daily tensions and sometimes found ways to bend the rules of chastity. When night fell, some would place candles in their windows to signal that they were open to temptation, and it did not stop there. In secret meetings, breaking the vows they had taken, they revealed that despite their religious lives, they were still driven by the same human impulses. Within the shelter of stone walls, vows of chastity often lost their hold. Nuns would receive men of various ages, following a path the church had strictly forbidden. It is hard to imagine a monastery where vows were secretly broken, but that is exactly what happened, turning these places into hubs of suppressed desires. But these secrets were not limited to clandestine encounters. Some convents operated what were known as Magdalene houses, created to shelter women seeking to rebuild their lives. In theory, these houses were meant to purify the behavior of their residents. In practice, however, many of them functioned as a way to manage venereal diseases, keeping a problem the church did not want to confront directly out of public view. In medieval convents, it was not just monks who defied the church's rules. Nuns also gave in to desires that went far beyond any regulation, often without the higher-ups taking action. This is just a glimpse of what really went on back then. Instead of being centers of purity and devotion, some monasteries were filled with tales of excess and hidden passions. The vows of chastity and obedience were often little more than a facade for those living there. In the end, many gave in to the same pleasures they publicly tried to avoid. Medieval monasteries have always been associated with devotion and purity. But was everything as sacred as they say? On special nights like Christmas, the stories whispered through the halls reveal that the line between holiness and sin could be surprisingly thin. They say that when the moon hovered over the monastery and everyone was supposedly asleep, silent silhouettes would cross dimly lit passageways. Nuns dressed in black would leave their cells with cautious steps, torn between fear and a strange sense of anticipation. They would head to secluded spots near the walls, where secret meetings took place under the cover of night. For those watching from the outside, the stone walls represented a sacred refuge. But for those within, those same walls became the backdrop for events that did not always align with the ideals of faith and renunciation upheld by the institution. Some old accounts suggest that during Christmas celebrations, certain monasteries became the center of some pretty unconventional activities. In an Italian convent from the 10th and 11th centuries, for instance, secret tunnels were discovered connecting the site to noble palaces. These pathways were not just escape routes for nuns who felt trapped by monastic routine. They also made possible special meetings with high-ranking men. It is easy to imagine the scandal that would have erupted if these stories had gone public at the time. But this was only a small part of a bigger picture. Many women joined convents against their will, sent there by families eager to protect their honor or avoid unwanted commitments. In a 15th century French monastery, for example, a secret library held manuscripts on alchemy, astrology, and natural sciences. While the church conducted official Christmas Mass, the nuns gathered at night to read and discuss these forbidden, text-exchanging simple gifts like herbal blends and recipes that went beyond what was acceptable under ecclesiastical authority. During the year-end festivities, stories are told about nuns who, under the cover of night, adopted false identities to blend in with the local population. Others orchestrated elaborate escapes using secret passages and coded signals known only to them. In some Spanish convents, records point to hidden altars where nuns gathered by candlelight to chant ancient hymns and use symbolic objects that went beyond official religious norms. Though described as Christmas celebrations, these ceremonies had roots predating Christianity, revealing a mystical dimension absent from official accounts. These examples show that life in many convents extended beyond prayers and moments of reflection. There was room for autonomy, protection, and learning during the year-end festivities. Behind the walls, transformations were taking place that challenged the conventional image of cloistered life, revealing a far more complex reality than most historical documents suggest. If this story caught you off guard, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with your friends. Subscribe to the channel for more hidden secrets from history. The Middle Ages hold far more than we can imagine. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, sometimes what happens in monasteries doesn't stay within those walls.